Уважаемые коллеги, всем добрый вечер. Меня зовут Леонид Данилов. Я представляю сервис Time to Market, сервис маркетинговой и консалтинговой поддержки технологических компаний. В рамках образовательной программы нашего сервиса сегодняшнее образовательное мероприятие, мастер-класс Пола Брандано. Пол является директором по маркетингу программы Applied Management Research. Yes? Это глобальная программа, которую реализует университет Калифорнии. Пол расскажет о возможностях, которые предоставляет эта программа для технологических компаний по всему миру. Программа реализуется с 1967 года. 3,000 companies, yes?
What's that?
In program participated 3,000 companies.
Over time, yes. Yeah.
За это время более 3000 компаний приняли участие в этой программе, воспользовались ее преимуществами. В России, в частности, в 2012 году компания «Оптаган», производитель светодиодной продукции, приняла участие в этой программе. Соответственно, Пол расскажет об этом опыте и поделится видением возможностей по выходу на рынке через эти программы и расскажет, собственно, о самих тех программах. Вот у нас, к сожалению, не так много собралось зрителей, как зарегистрировалось. Ну, понятно, сказываются, видимо, погодные условия. Для тех, кто не смог сегодня прийти, вот мне позвонило сегодня, наверное, человек 5, сказали, что, к сожалению, не могут. Мы ведем видеозапись, она будет выложена в начале следующей недели на сайте timetomarket.ru. Сейчас передаю слово Полу. Пол, please.
Good evening. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you at the Higher School of Economics. My name is Paul Brandano. I represent the University of California at Los Angeles. And I'm here actually in Russia for several reasons. One, I represent a university at the university level relationship. UCLA has a program or is part of a program called Eureka, which in Russia is designed to help Russian national research universities connect to the best practices of American research universities for the purposes of technology transfer and commercialization of entrepreneurial ideas and products. The concept is that in Russia, patents are created and often never get to market. And there's obviously a clear path through people like you in the room, entrepreneurs. And so as a challenge to overcome, the Eureka program is designed to connect your university to ours. So that's one reason I'm here. My primary reason, personally, is that I represent the business school, the Anderson School of Management at UCLA. It's our largest business program. It's a master's program, and I run within the MBA. I run 3 what we call management field study programs. In the introduction, you mentioned that 3,000 companies have directly engaged with the university, and actually just about 500 of those 3,000 are foreign technology companies just past the startup phase. Companies like yours that are at a place where you're considering internationalization, or you've found a market, you see a potential for a market here in Russia, and you're a few years off from internationalization and want to go global. We work in markets, and I'll tell you about it in a moment, all over the world, working with entrepreneurs like yourselves and all the people in the investment channel in and around you that are trying to help you get to a new place. So I'll take you through it in just a moment. But one of the questions I got before we started was, who is UCLA? So University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA at the bottom, representative of 1 to 10 UC schools. Over 1.5 million people have gone through a UC school. It's our largest collection of research universities in the United States. Certainly if you haven't heard of UCLA, you've likely heard of Cal Berkeley. That's also a UC school. So UCLA is the Southern California equivalent to Cal Berkeley. They're the 2 largest schools in the UC system, with 38,000 graduate and undergraduate students, 328 degree programs. It says 10, but there's actually 11 Nobel Prize winners after this year. We just won another in economics. U.S. News ranks us number 2 in public universities. And like I said, I represent the 14th ranked business school in the United States, the Anderson School. In terms of technology commercialization, this sort of paints the picture. In the last relatively short term, we've been able to license our technologies 104 times in California alone. So this is the Bay Area, and this is Southern California. So we're not only are we taking technology and developing it in the university, but truly commercializing it in a way that makes people like you quite wealthy, frankly, and California, and across the United States. So across the United States, UCLA technologies exist in most states and 177 times licensed. And every year, universities are known for startups. These numbers that you see represent startups in our own incubator. So in addition to licensing technology, entrepreneurs are creating real businesses out of the school every year, more so than any other school in the United States. So why am I here tonight? So we are often asked by entrepreneurs as a university for help, and it's not practical to help every company. But we can certainly, as a business school, make a big impact. So we've designed a program that is a win-win. So across those 3,000 companies that you heard about before, the primary goal on the UCLA side is to train our MBAs to use what they've learned in the classroom in a practical setting. In every case, our MBAs come in with at least 5 years of experience, so they're quite experienced before they even get to us. But in the program that's global, they've got 9 years of experience before they get to us. And they're answering these questions on behalf of companies. So if you're here in Russia and you're looking at the US market, you're doing it from here, and you're doing it while you're trying to run your business. What I do is I present an opportunity to foreign technology companies who need to say, where's my target market? Where do I go first? Where's the beachhead? Do I need a distributor? And if so, who are they? Where are the resellers? Does the product even make sense in the marketplace? If not, what do I need to change? And who do I ask about that? Who needs to inform that question? So these are all questions that, frankly, entrepreneurs are asking all the time and just diving in head first. And so we created a program 15 years ago now that is actually what makes our part-time MBA program #1 in 2007 that answers those questions on behalf of people like you. It's called the Global Access Program. To get to GAP, you have to spend a lot of time working with entrepreneurs. Everything below here is sort of the pipeline of company creation. What I'm finding in Russia is that this lower tier is basically just developing at best. The idea of alumni interaction, for instance, is something that could go a long way, is what I've been told. But certainly incubators and accelerators are developing all over the place. The idea of technology transfer is happening all over the place. But even in an absence of this, the GAP program represents an opportunity here in Russia, and it's my hope that whether it's your university is developing something similar to GAP or using GAP itself, that we can bring awareness to it. So to just give you sort of a brief overview of how this works, entrepreneurs are assigned a team. At one company, 55 companies a year, assigned a team of 5 MBAs. The MBAs are professionals. Again, and I'll go through a whole slide about it. Professionals, this is their master's thesis. So they've done everything they have to do as an MBA. They work full-time anyway. It's not uncommon, for instance, for a telecom company to be working with 2 Qualcomm engineers on their team. Very high-level people. This is their master's thesis. It's the equivalent of 2 courses. It is as close to a tier 1 consulting experience as we can make it for them. Meaning, if you were going to call a consultant to do this work as an entrepreneur for you, it would cost you whatever the market rate is. And we've talked to Deloitte, we've talked to Bain and McKinsey, and they've told us somewhere between $100,000 in value and $350,000 in value, depending on the blended rate that you would charge out as a consultant. So at the end of the day, the team develops a strategic new market entry study. So again, they're going to answer all of those questions, but they're going to do it with financials, American financials and American accounting standards. And they're going to come back to you with a yes or no, and all the things that you want to be asking about the U.S. market or China or Brazil, they're asking on your behalf and they're delivering in a real way. At the end of the day, they stand in front of 3 judges. Often those judges are VCs from the Bay or angel investors, or technology experts from the U.S. or otherwise. We put 3 essentially relevant judges on a panel, and we bring 500 people from around the world together from all of these companies that we work with. And for a full day, these judges are judging these final reports and saying, well, hey, we saw that you made this assumption about your financials. We don't like it. Back it up. And the team has spent a tremendous amount of time building the plan with you that they stand up and they do it. And this is their master's thesis. That's where they defend themselves, just like a thesis should be defended. But the results are to you. The team invests over 2,000 hours. So again, if you looked on the commercial market for something like this, you wouldn't find it. More importantly, what they do is something that most entrepreneurs don't have a tremendous amount of time to do, and that's talk to people. If you listen to Steve Blank and he tells you what to be doing, he says pick up the phone. Right? I mean, just get out there and do it. Understand the market. So that's what our team does. So what we do is we take a fee, and I'll tell you about it in a minute. We turn over almost 90% of the fee back to the team so that they can travel and go to the local market. In the end, they interview customers, distributors, regulators, suppliers, producers, anybody who matters, your competitors, and they inform those results. I talked about who these people are, but just to highlight a few points, a third of all of them already have a master's degree in hard sciences or engineering. They're coming back to get an MBA to transition to management. This is their one chance to work with an entrepreneur. 10 students have already been awarded 19 patents in the current class that we've got. One's a PhD, 11 are CPAs, 10 are CFAs. These are people that are coming back to fill a management toolbox. The companies we work with are entirely technology companies. We focus the program around technology entrepreneurs because it's much easier, one, to control quality, but two, to give a consistent experience over time. The products are fully launched. Each of these companies have products that are fully launched because we want to make sure that the company is not going to go away, but also that the CEO has real time to engage with the team and understand the market. The companies have 10 or more employees and healthy financials, and that they're all seeking to sell outside of Russia. Every team has an advisor, and actually, ultimately, they have two advisors. They have I can explain it if there's a question about it, but ultimately they have one main advisor who serves in the background. The team consults directly, but these are either ladder faculty or they're technology entrepreneurs. 4 of them are Tech Coast Angels and represent the investment community directly. And so as the team's going through this process, they're getting feedback from any expert they need, essentially. We work every year in the same timeline, and there's some fees there, so I'll take the opportunity to go through that. Every year we work from June, it doesn't even show June there, but from June to December. Our last day to apply as a company is May, and then we roll in through a bidding process, this connection to the perfect team, more or less. Teams bid on what they're good at, companies end up with a team that's best fit. And you start in June and you end in December. Each company pays $15,000. And I'll talk about where we are around the world and how we got there, but in every case, $15,000 is nothing, and when you combine that with the fact that often there's an in-country partner who's funding part or all of that, it's a very small amount of money, considering what you get. The reason I'm here today is because these opportunities don't exist on the marketplace. I mean, you really can't, you shouldn't probably spend the kind of money that Tier 1 consultants would charge you at this stage of the game. And so, again, I'm here to do in Russia what we've done elsewhere. So we're in Australia, Finland, Chile, France, and the US, Italy, New Zealand, and New Mexico, Spain and Ireland, Israel, UK, and Singapore, Korea, Brazil, China, and this year's companies include a Russian company, Optigan. So I was here in May in St. Petersburg having very similar conversations about Eureka and about Gap. And our partners, the American councils, arranged 5 meetings with companies, including Optigan. We were extremely lucky to meet them, and they immediately understood what we were offering. If you don't know Optigan, they're the world's smallest fully integrated LED company, backed by Rusnano, by Mikhail Prokhorov, and extremely well established, have a great market here in Russia. Clearly not a pure startup, but for what we're doing, I think they're a great first example, and they're a company that most strive to be anywhere in the world. The next 3 slides are actually the product of the team. So this isn't anything more than just to sort of describe who they are, but just to give you an idea, the team now broke up the company's 100-plus SKUs, identified that these are commercial, industrial, or residential, and then looked at them for where's the opportunity. So should Optigan come to the U.S. at all? Does it matter that the product is from Russia? Is that a good thing? Should they be marketing on it? If so, where should they begin? Mikhail Prokhorov owns the Brooklyn Nets, right? So wouldn't it be great to go to the Brooklyn Nets? And in fact, they were already in discussions on the Brooklyn Nets deal when the team came through. And one of the key learnings was that despite connections, despite the fact that Mikhail Prokhorov owned the Nets, New Jersey is an interesting place, and you have to know the guys that put the bulbs in. You have to know the union. And so the team spent a lot of time talking to the union, talking to the people that really matter when you get these deals done, and sort of gave them a post-mortem on what they should have done. And then from there have gone out all across the United States, and I'll show you exactly where they've gone. They went to 7 locations with that 15,000. I spent probably just over 12 to go to Las Vegas, Atlanta, and San Diego in the U.S., focused at specific conferences. I mean, this is a practice that any entrepreneur should be doing anyway if they could. Went to every conference they could, spoke to all the stakeholders they could in lighting, in sort of product marketing, all the people that matter in regulatory for these people, and gathered data. They also went to Germany, where their fab exists, and then came here to Russia to understand who the company is. So it's one thing to tell an entrepreneur, go out and do all this stuff because our data says so. But it's another thing to do it in the context of the company. That, hey, Optigan is of a certain size. We often work with a company that's 3 or 4 people. They're just trying to make ends meet. And just how do you make the recommendations that they need to hear with the reality of a 3 or 4 person company? So all the recommendations that the team is making on your behalf are informed by this process. And this is who they interviewed. So this is at the midpoint. I think they finished with over 150 contacts. But I talked about a broad spectrum. We don't want them to go out and just cherry pick and make a few phone calls. We want them in front of people, just like an entrepreneur would be. And they talk to customers and break that out to, cross the SKUs. Right? I mean, they talk to everybody that could potentially be a customer. Here they talk to all the people that mattered: electricians, manufacturers, competitors. So again, it just proves the point that this is the kind of thing an entrepreneur wants to be doing if they could, often, while they're trying to build and produce an optimal business. So the feedback from Alexei Kovsh at Optigan has been incredibly positive. I go back in a week where the team will present directly to Alexei and Maxim at UCLA, and they'll present in front of a group of judges. But Alexei has said unequivocally that this has been a tremendous experience, that the team, if he joked, if all the students are like my team, America has a bright future. So I'm here because we can do this anywhere, and we do. We opened up Estonia last year. They're putting aside something like $3 billion in European aid to support R&D and technology development. And they're way ahead of the game in the EU, and they're saying we want to do this because it's a very low-hanging fruit opportunity to go and promote our companies. And to make that point even more clearly, 14 years ago, we started working with Finland in 1999. And after all that time, they've put 134 companies through the program. In total, we've worked with 494 companies in 19 countries. So they make up a majority of that number. And they just named a new director general at Tekis, and he introduced himself in a letter to Finland on the website. And of the 8 paragraphs that he put on the website, 2 of them were dedicated to Gap. And he said, in part, that during his first days on the job, he was blown away by the effectiveness of the Gap, that he even co-branded the Tekis Gap program. And that of the $1.2 million that the Finnish government has invested in the Gap program, they've produced $20 million and 143 jobs. And those numbers might seem small, but if you compare it to what you would, if you were to take those, those 1.2 million and multiply it by what they would have charged on the commercial market, the investment would have been much larger and likely produced, the same kinds of results, frankly. So $20 million in the first year of impact plus 143 jobs, and we expect that those numbers will continue to grow. These are the program commitments. And again, I stand here not because I want people to walk up to me and say, I want to be the next company. And it would be great if you want to, but more because I'm here to promote best practices in Russia, from research universities here to there. So if Higher School of Economics or some other program develops something like this in Russia, that'd be a win for us. And we're happy to promote it. But anyway, the fee for our program is $15,000. $12,000 goes right back to the team for their expenses. So they'll travel. It's a nonprofit experience for us. It's a training experience. Students have access to you as the executives, which is more important, that they get your time, they get your critical data, your financials, anything that you give them, they'll give you back, more or less. And then you make 2 trips to California, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? I mean, so 2 trips to Southern California. Most people usually combine it and make it a trip north as well, to the Bay. But you come and you kick off the program in July with the team. You scope down the project so it's appropriate. And then you come back in December, which we're going to do next week with companies, and you get your results. You spend 1 to 2 hours with the team every week on average, and that includes that first weekend, so it's scattered throughout. And you'll host 2 students here in Russia for a couple of days, just like you would a traditional consulting firm. So that's me. I mean, that's the GAP program. Again, I spend, just to sort of open it up to questions, I spend my year traveling to the 12 markets that I showed you. This year I've been to Finland twice, to Estonia twice, Russia twice, Australia twice, New Zealand. And I speak to people like you all the time, more or less. I mean, I speak to the ecosystem that is the global entrepreneurship ecosystem. And I see the angels and I see the VCs, and we talk about all of these issues. So I'm open to any questions you might have on that as well. But I appreciate the time on a Friday night. I know I got a lot of curious looks as to who could I be. But I think I present value, and I look forward to potentially working with all of you.
Thank you, Paul. Let's have some questions. Коллеги, пожалуйста, у кого есть вопрос, в микрофон мы пишем на видео. Желательно, чтобы все говорили в микрофон. Так, сейчас. По дороге.
Could you show, please, the last slide?
The last slide.
Yeah. Do I correctly understand that this is the profile of the companies you seek?
Yes. Yeah. Is that on? Yeah. So the median company is a $3 million revenue company. So the smallest we had this year was something like 30,000. 3 million. 3 million in turnover. Yeah. But that's median. Yes. That's median though. So we're something in 30,000. Yes. All over the map. So we're actually very good question. We're very broad in our definition of technology. So this year we have Optigan. We also have Valente, which is a 100-year-old railroad track management company, basically. So very broad in our definition of technology. It's more about, it's a product that you're bringing to market.
Hey, Paul. George Gogolev from RBC, and as ex-head of marketing and PR for Optigan, it was nice to see all the old folks, the team, the marketing materials I was developing and the products here in your presentation. 2 questions. One is, who do you have from Estonia? Can you name the company? And 2, I think we're no worse than Finland. I'm pretty sure Russia can supply a good pipeline of companies to the programs. So how many can you handle?
Well, that's a really good question. So the Estonian companies, Reachu and Regio is what they're called in Estonia. Tet Jagamaji, if anybody knows, is in the ICT world. He runs their ICT organization as well. And gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Codeborn is the other, and it's a load balancing software for energy, big energy. So, and that's honestly probably one of the pure startups that we've accepted this year, and we did it because Tet Jagamaji took a group of people from Estonia to New Zealand, of all places. He didn't go across the bay to Finland. He went to New Zealand, and he ran into 3 former Gap CEOs who all said, "Got to do this." So he called us and he said, "I can not only bring me, but I'll bring another guy." And the other guy was a pure startup, but he's been tremendous. And I think they received funding through Enterprise Estonia, which is the equivalent of TechIS. And then your question, sorry, what was the second piece?
How many can you handle?
Oh, so I would love to say 10, 15. Finland brings us 15 a year, but we're limited in, I think our limitation, frankly, is language barrier. So we typically have, I would say, somewhere in the range of 4 to 5 students who speak fluent Russian in a given class. And so our hope is to have 5 Russian opportunities for them at best this year. But we'd be open to sort of other arrangements if we could make the language thing work, whether it's through translation or otherwise. But it's not easy to get around here if you don't speak Russian, as I'm learning.
Коллеги, еще вопросы?
Yeah, no, also a good question. We get the sense here in Russia. So I heard your question. Your question was, can you also enter other markets, Eastern Europe or otherwise? And the answer is yes. And so more often than not, what happens is companies will come to us and say, I want to go to the U.S. In the early stage of the project, it becomes pretty clear, for one reason or another, that's not it's not the primary market. That you might be better off going to a neighboring market, or from the beginning. So one thing we don't want to do is go to Russia and keep you here, because we'd like to see this kind of program develop organically here in your business schools and your other schools. So we try not to encroach, but nonetheless, if you're here and going to a neighboring market, the team will start by leveraging the fact that we have 37,000 alumni around the world. We're an international based MBA program. So 37,000 alumni dispersed throughout the world, mostly in the US, of course, but for instance, over 100 students are living in Japan. So the team will start by calling on those alumni as a base. And there's a tremendous number. I think there's something like 75 in Russia. And they'll start there, whatever the target market is, and reach out to them and leverage that network, starburst from there, and build contacts. And then they'll go to conferences. So I guess the question is, where are you going? And then, how well can we support you that way?
Thank you, Paul. Коллеги, еще вопросы? Paul, I have one little question. If Russian technology company wants to participate, to take a part in your program in 2013, yes, which time the company needs to contact you?
Yes.
When?
Okay, mm-hmm. So we actually start, it's a rolling admissions process. We're just starting now. So we end in December 8th, and then we come up for air, and probably in early January we'll start calling companies. We've been to Finland, to Italy already, and so I suspect we'll match up about 40 companies out of the 55 by mid-February. And then from there, Australia, New Zealand, these are markets where we usually get 3 or 4 or 5, Israel. So we'll be matching all the way through probably mid-May, is my guess.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Paul, I got one more question. So this Optagon company, was it the only company that applied for this, or this was the only success you had in Russia?
Oh, good question. No, I will say this, actually, 5 applied, and when we got the application, we got it in early June. And so we were done. We had everything matched. In fact, it took a company to fall out and say we had other priorities for us to open a slot for Optagon. So even if they had said yes and we had said yes, there was a chance to go to a whole next year. We never have trouble finding companies, frankly. It's just a matter of being diverse. Yeah.
So what was wrong, with the rest companies? What was the...
They're all great, but Optagon was the best. So Optagon, when we went in the door, they got this. They're obviously at a place as an organization that they're going to be global anyway. And they're just resource constrained. They'd rather have people doing the core job they've been hired to do. And so they said, of course we get it. And by the way, there was last year and probably again this year, 50% of our fees were covered by, for one company, were covered by the American Councils and New Eurasia Foundation. And so if that opportunity exists this year, again, we'll offer essentially a 50% discount to a company. Probably the first in the door. And that's just that's something that I hope that we can replicate in general. It would be great if I could get a subsidy that covers most or all for all companies. Optagon? What's that? You may know better than me, George, but I think...
this year they made about $40 million in Russia.
Yeah, 40 mil. Yeah.
40 million.
Yeah. In Russia.
Yeah.
In Russia.
Most of their sales are here anyway.
None yet. Yeah. So that's I don't know if they may have one-off relationships, but in Russia to have a shot at the United States market, they knew they were going to go there one way or the other. It's just a question of being informed, and so they took the opportunity to get informed before they go.
The program goes for 1 year, and what happens next year? Is there any kind of support or something like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's 6 months, actually. So you go from June to December. And when you're handed the report, it's just like any other consulting engagement. It's up to you whether or not you use it, right? But what often happens is that this team of 5 people, first of all, they're agendaless, except to help you, right? They're not 5 consultants who are trying to sell the next deal. So they end up being sort of semi-experts and a network to draw from moving forward. The other thing that's true is that there's 500 companies that have been through the experience, and they're global. And so one of the things I'm focused on in this job is making that network grow within itself. That, when you go to New Zealand, you should be able to call on a few Gap partners who've been there with you in some other form. So not only do, in theory, yes, the team goes away, but they don't go away forever, and you've just opened yourself up to real contacts in the United States. They're going to hand you over 100 direct contacts they've made in the market. To give you an example, Foot Balance is a company in Finland who was making insoles for running shoes. more or less they were making insoles in the store. You put your foot on a machine, it produces the insole. And they were essentially first to market in Europe with it. They'd done pretty well. The team, within the first 3 months of the project, first half of the project, identified they were doing an interview with Roadrunner Sports, which is one of the chains they were interviewing, sporting goods stores. And the guy said, I like this. Let me get in touch with them now. So halfway through the project, the guy closed a $3 million distribution deal with the third largest sporting goods chain in the United States. So, opportunities do come from this. And they're not a sales team per se, but you're effectively putting an agendaless sales team in front of your potential client. So it's a unique situation. It's hard immediately to grasp it because it doesn't exist elsewhere, but I have online, and I'll give you my card, there's testimonials from around the world. There's 202 testimonials, and they're all positive. And the negative ones are there, too, if you want to look at them. But out of 202, I would say there's probably 98% that are positive. Because how do you not get value from 100 interviews in the target market? And that's where it starts.
I was wondering if you've ever tracked the success of those companies, like if you've compared, say, growth rates or expert growth rates, like 3 years before they went through Gap and 3 years after, something like that.
It's a target for me. I've actually just taken this job. Just to give you a little bit of background, I graduated from the program, went through a Gap project, worked for IBM for 5 years selling technology, and I had run a similar program at UCLA. So they called me and said, hey, this job's open, we need someone to travel internationally, blah, 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 right? So I bring a technology background to it, but I've also got a marketing interest. They just never did. They were lean, didn't have the bandwidth to go and do that kind of research. But I think the proxy for that is the study that Techus did. The numbers that you saw on that slide from Eero Soini are a result of a third-party independent study that they did that said in that first year after Gap, the collection of companies that have gone through the experience have raised $20 million in additional revenue, and then from there, 143 jobs. So that's a very conservative estimate. It's available online, the study, but they suspect that there's a multiplying effect in years 2 and 3. They just didn't include it. They wanted to be conservative. So yes, the outcomes are positive, but it's just like any other consulting engagement.
Those were revenue numbers you're talking about, because in the presentation I thought the numbers were like what they fundraised.
So yeah, those are we have $20 million. Let me see. Actually the global number, and I don't have it on the slide, but the global number for Gap that we've been informed of, the sort of idiosyncratic conversations with executives that have gone through, have told us that 200 million have been raised in the time that we've been measuring, probably the last 10 years, from A rounds out of this thing. And by the way, the Foot Balance took that $3 million deal through an A round in Europe and raised $8 million with it. So, it's a matter of where you are, what your goals are on the program. Some companies come through just to get those judges to see their product at the end. And what they find is in the process of getting the judges, the VCs and angels, to see it, they've also got this amazing experience where they get all the data. So it's market exposure, it's data, and then it's outcomes, depending on what you do with it. So we have the program is actually founded and run by two of the founders of the Tech Coast Angels, which is the largest angel group on the West Coast. It's 300 angels that work in basically big groups. They have to invest $50,000 each a year. And then from there, they can team up in groups of 5 or whatever to do due diligence and share the cost of the investment. So it's a very efficient angel network. And if not them, then it's their network beyond that gets exposure to this as well. So, that's not the primary goal for us, but we want to make sure that if there's a company coming through and looking for that kind of exposure, that we make it available to them. Tech Coast Angels. I don't know. If you give me your card, I'll get it to you. But if you look up if you Google Tech Coast Angels, they'll certainly come up. Like technology, TECH. Yeah, I'll write it. Yeah. I don't know the site offhand. Yes, it's the Tech Coast is a play on West Coast. Yeah.
Коллеги, если есть вопросы, которые, скажем, индивидуально хочется задать Полу, да, то тоже готов на них ответить. Да, то есть мы закончим основную часть, и, соответственно, можно будет подойти, обменяться контактами, уточнить какие-то интересующие вас вопросы. Paul, we have all questions, so I think some of our audience will take your contact, yes, and leave their contact for you. Thank you very much for your speech, for your master-class. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for giving me the opportunity.